everybody. So I'm back in the assembly room and I've got the gear case painted. This is the PTO gear case. And I've got the gasket on and it's got sealer on it, and I'm ready to install it in the side of the tractor. So I'll set my camera up over there and I'll lift it over there and start putting it on. The first trick is to get the spline gear in the right spot to slip in. And got it pretty well in. And now put in the cap screws in the inside. So this Allen wrench was stuck inside the gearbox along with the bolts. So you could assemble it. I suppose back in the 30s, nobody probably had an Allen wrench like that. So they had to include that so you could get it bolted on. And then just tighten up side to side to get it on there square. And then make sure the gear goes on the spline shaft. I'm trying to determine if it needs to be tilted back or forward for the power shaft to go back through there. I don't know, it looks pretty square on the tractor. I think I'll take a chance. You can adjust it back and forth with these set screws. Okay, I think that's pretty well tightened up. I got just a little bit of play in the bevel gear, so I think that should be there. I don't think they're binding. Now, I think I'll just leave the rest of that for now and put the flywheel on. I probably should try and install the power shaft. See, that power shaft sits back on the planked platform. So I'm seeing if my shaft is square with the gearbox. Actually, it wants to kind of go back. See, I've got the shaft into the gearbox and then my flange here, and it appears that I need to turn the top of the gearbox back. So I'll loosen up my Allen wrench bolts in there again. It went a little bit, but that's pretty good. It's pretty good now. I've got a lot of tension on these bolts now. That's about as far as I can go. There isn't much of a slotted hole inside there where they bolt to the case, so you don't get a lot of leeway in there. But I'm pretty much back as far as I can go, but it's darn close. Maybe I'll just back that off just a little bit in case it's binding. Trying to pull it in. Yeah, that gave me a little bit of slack. Probably better would be that little pipe. Torquing with that. I think that looks good. I'll take one more measurement of it here. Yeah, I'll tighten up my set screws. Tighten up the jam nuts on the set screws. Okay, that's pretty well installed. It's up against the case good. And I think my bevel gear is clear in against the thrust bearing. Got just a slight amount of play there, which is almost perfect. Now, I'll have to put the bearing in here and bolt the flange up when I get the floorboards mounted down and get some bolt holes drilled through the planks back there. And then put on the later styled fender bracket here that has room for the power shaft to go through. But my next order of business is to get the flywheel put on. I've decided to finish up installing the PTO shaft and bolting down the platform, drilling all the bolts into the platform and securing that all together. So the first thing I got to do is put this flange on. That goes on first. And it had a retainer with a felt seal in it. And I found this rubber lip seal that was pretty darn close, and I think that's going to work. So I am going to use that instead of the felt. So then that goes on, and then I got to put the bearing on. Pack the bearing first. Make sure the grease gets down in there to where the rollers are. So all the rest of the PTO unit runs when you're driving, going forward, when the spline shaft is running. But if the PTO is disengaged, why this bearing does not run and the shaft does not run. I still haven't decided whether to put grease in the PTO unit. I probably will. See if it leaks bad. If it leaks bad, I'll probably drain it back out. But the only thing that would probably leak bad would be the cover on the side. So for some reason, they put this little funky keeper on there. I really don't know the reasoning behind it. I suppose they thought it would keep from pulling the shaft out the back. This PTO unit has never been used. New old stock. The shaft that came with the box was all right, but I had this other new old stock rear shaft with the pedestal on the back, and it looked way better, so I'm using it. And then got to put a gasket in there, and maybe it won't go over the bearing. It won't. Should have put the gasket on first. Maybe I can sneak it in there. Maybe put a little sealer on it. I use about as thin as a coat as I can get on there. Like I said before, I'm not sure. It's probably overkill. Probably don't need all that sealer on there, but it's peace of mind, I guess. We'll see if we can. I think that's the right one. So I think I can sneak that underneath the bearing, possibly. Maybe. There. Okay, now I'll take the camera over to where I'm going to install. Put a little grease on these splines so they slip in. Okay, as you can see, I've got the platform wood up here, and I'm going to set the PTO right here and put it into the box. And try not to scratch up the pretty wood on the platform. Had it in there several times, but gonna need a little persuasion. So that should be disengaged there. And that's engaged. Gear to go back on the splines easily. Give it. Seems like everything's right. Okay. And now I gotta space the platform boards. Have to gap them just a little bit. I would say probably 3/16. And then I think I'll go underneath and measure them, and then make sure that they're more or less equidistant with the holes underneath. Put that on there to kind of hold that side down. But make sure the boards are in the center. Also, I'll have to get my measure and get underneath there and mark the holes. Okay, I'm ready to put on the flywheel. Got the PTO gearbox all put together, except for the rear shaft. I have to do that yet, but I think this will just slip on there. And then I got a new keyway on a bolt that I can reach in there and line up. Okay, got it on there good enough to let the crane out and get that out of the way. I think I'll roll it back so the keyway's on top. Now I have got a jig to pull that on with. I'm going to try. I'm going to pull these two bolts out and then put a piece of ready bolt in each one out to a bar. And I've got a block. Let's see. As long as it doesn't push on very hard, you don't have to be too concerned about that case breaking. It would probably take a lot to break that case. Hopefully it'll clear my PTO box. Sure don't want to get your fingers in there. Make sure your oil slinger dowel seats into the oil slinger. See right down in there, you probably can't see that, but I think it looks good. Now I'm up against the crankshaft. Got to check for in play. So I think my only choice is to back these off and see what kind of in play I got. I think it should go over that way if I had a crowbar. Yeah. There's probably 3/16 there. It probably needs to go in another 16th. If I had a block. Okay, I got another block in there so my crankshaft can come through. And you don't want it tight with no in play, but you don't need a lot either. I would say if you had a 16th, you're probably good. I guess what I'm doing is I'm pushing the crank over. I could tap on the clutch side a little bit and drive the crankshaft through. Didn't really get much out of it there. Use a big block to drive it over a little bit. I think that moved a little, about a 16th. Maybe a couple more whacks and it'll be good. Yeah, that looks good. So I'll take my jig off. Stick in the, yeah, I think I already got it over. I think I still got a little bit too much. Try it again. Still probably got a 16th. I think that's probably going to be good. Let's see. I could take just a little bit more, but boy, as little bit as it's going to run, it's not going to matter, I don't think. But there's probably about a 16th. Okay, now we can start tightening up the flywheel. It takes like, if I remember right, I've had these bolts for a while, but I had to order them. I found bolts that were long enough at Fastenal finally, but I think they were 7 inches long, and the book says 6 3/4, so I had to cut them off a bit. But you want to go back and forth with them. Don't over tighten one compared to the other. And if you got a good fit on your shaft, you should be able to pretty much tighten all you can tighten with that wrench. Give it all you can give it. That's about all I got. And there it's on. That looks good with the PTO shaft in there. And now the crankshaft in there. Okay, see if it'll roll. Seems good. Probably come back in a day or so and retorque those bolts on there. But other than that, I think we're pretty well done here. So now we have a flywheel on it that we can time the magneto, and so that's a step ahead. So keep tuning in and we'll see you down the road.